Hello everyone and welcome to a new Pandora FMS workshop. Today we are going to talk about a new very important feature that has been included since version 756 and that we have called Command Center, and it's thought for the centralized management in the Metaconsole environments. Well, first of all, a little bit of introduction. As you know, Metaconsole originally was a view interface for different separate Pandora FMS instances. It means different Pandora FMS consoles with their servers and their databases. So we, in this case of environments with several instances, we have a meta console like an overview for all the environments where we can see the information for all the agents in that environment, and also we were able to manage some elements, for example users, profiles or groups in those environments, synchronizing that information from meta console to the nodes. So we have been including changes here. For example, one of the latest changes we introduced were the possibility to manage policies from Metaconsole. And this command center is a step forward, trying to improve the synchronization of those elements. So we are going to follow the official information in the Pandora FMS wiki for this part. I'm going to try to explain everything about how this works and some important points you have to bear in mind to make this work. And we are going to see a little example in an environment. I don't have very much data, but you will have the idea of how this works and the result of it. So from our wiki, you can follow the steps with me. Go to the administration guide. In the sixth point called Meta Console, there is a specific section that it's the command center. We are going to follow the information here. So this command center is a new feature introduced in version 756, and as soon as we get in a new metaconsole environment with this version, there will be a warning message here that will say that this system is not centralized and that we need to go to the command center to perform this database merge process. This is if we want to use all the centralized management features. So what are we going to find here? Well, in this command center section, there will be a list of the different nodes that are registered in this metaconsole. From this list, what we are going to do, it's unify the databases from all the nodes and the metaconsole. So there will be a result that will be a merge of all the elements, the different users, the different profiles, different groups, different policies, different plugins, etc., different collections. And that merge will be the result for all the databases, for the Metaconsole database, for the different nodes database. Let's see with a simple example using this image. Suppose that in this case it's focused on policies. Suppose that we have this kind of environment where there is a meta console with a policy called Linux, a node 1 with a policy called Windows, and inside this policy it has two modules, one that is called host alive, the other one host latency, and host alive has a specific configuration that we are going to call configuration 1. And we have a second node, the node 2, with two policies in this case, one called Solaris with just this module that it's called keep alive, and the Windows policy that have also two modules like in node 1, in this case one that it's called CPU load and the other one that it's called host alive, exactly the same name that we have here in node 1, but with a different configuration that we are going to call it configuration 2. So what will be the result of the merge of unify those databases for this example, for these policies? Well, the result will be this. We will have all the meta console and the different nodes with exactly the same information because we have unified this information. And this result will be the merge of all the different elements inside this these nodes, these elements in the list. So we will have for all of them a policy called Linux, that is the information that we originally had in the Metaconsole, a policy called Solaris with this keep alive module that we had in that node 2, and a policy called Windows that will be also the result of merging, of unifying the information we have in the Windows policy from node 1 and node 2. So in this case we'll have only one policy called Windows. We won't have two policies called Windows Node 1 and Windows Node 2. It will be only one, and it will have the different modules from those policies. In this case, the CPU load from node 2, host latency from node 1, and a module host alive. The case of host alive is that we already have two different configurations, one from node 1 and another one from node 2. And what this will do is take the configuration from the element that it's in the top on the priority order we established. When we go to Command Center, we are going to see it in the example. We'll have a table like this, and we will set a priority order for the Metaconsole and the different nodes. So my element in the top of the list will have more priority for its configuration than the elements that are below it. So in this case, as both node 1 and node 2 had a host alive module in the policy Windows, but with different configurations, as node 1 is it's more higher in the priority nodes order, the configuration that will be taken into account is the configuration 1 from node 1 instead of configuration 2, because that's something that I have established. This is something that will happen with most of the elements that will be considered exactly the same instead of creating separate elements, because, well, most of the times if we have a host alive module, it's almost the same for all the different instances, but maybe we have different thresholds or something a little bit different, but it's a configuration that if we want to centralize, if we want to unify, it will be the same for all of them. So that's the reason why we are going to establish only one. We will establish some priority order for these configurations. Which elements will be affected by this nodes priority order that we have mentioned? Well, the elements in this list that you have in the wiki will be the ones that will be unified, that will be merged, and that will be affected by this order. There will be users, user profiles, agent groups, file collections, alert templates, alert commands, alert actions, server plugins, OS. You know, in the nodes you can configure or, well, register new different type of OS, module tags, module categories, module groups. Component groups are the library components, like network components and local components for network modules and software agent modules. Component templates, the templates for this kind of modules from the node library. Inventory modules, monitoring policies, the policies inside that, the modules, sorry, inside that policies, the inventory modules in the policies, the plugins inside the policies, collections, alerts and external alerts from the policies, the actions for those alerts, and the agents inside the policies. I are also mentioned here the agents generally because after the merge process, all the agents will be managed from Metaconsole, but there's not part of the process that affect the agent's integrity. Okay, it only affects this kind of elements and configurations. So when do we consider the elements that are the same? Well, it's different for each kind of element. For example, in the users, they are considered the same user if they have the same ID, or in the case of profiles, if they have the same name. Usually it's only when they have exactly the same name, but in some cases it's different. So just check the list if you have any doubt about this, and verify that your configuration will be correct in the case of using the command center. Something important is that most of the IDs of the elements inside the database will be changed. So be care about some parameters like auto create group. There is the information here for that, because in this parameter, in the Pandora server configuration file, you need to specify a valid group ID. So as this process will change most of the IDs, almost all the IDs of the elements that will be merged in the unified process. Take this into account and be sure that you set a valid value for your configurations after running this process. Okay, so there are some prerequisites for launching this command center for the database merge, and we are going to check them one by one. First of all, and the most important, is that you need to have a correct connectivity between the Metaconsole and the nodes databases and APIs. So from Metaconsole, if you go to Setup, Meta Setup, and the console setup, be sure that for all the nodes registered here, I only have one for this example, you have a proper connectivity for the database and the API. Okay, if something is not in green here, just edit this configuration and be sure the data is correct. And also in the node, for example, for the API, be sure you have a proper configuration in the general setup for the IP list with API access and the API password. Okay, this is very important because all the information will be sent between Metaconsole and nodes using also direct database connectivity or API. For example, in the collections, you use the API. Also, be sure that nodes are able to connect to the Metaconsole database because they also need to connect to synchronize some information. So be sure that in the setup enterprise, the information set here about the Metaconsole database is correct, and that the node is able to connect to that MySQL. Also, the server from all the nodes and the server from the Metaconsole must be able to connect to the API. So something that you can configure is the public URL. It's not mandatory, it's not really mandatory, but it's something recommended if you have any doubt about if this will work or not. So you can just simply go to the Metaconsole in the Metaconsole setup and copy the URL from your Metaconsole and set it as the public URL, and this must work. In some cases with some specific configurations, this is mandatory because you need to specify it, but in most of the cases it won't be. But if you are not sure, just set it and this will work. And also for the nodes, if you go to the general setup, to the public URL, do exactly the same. Copy the URL and set it to the node. Okay, so this is exactly the URL that the Metaconsole and the nodes will use to try to connect to the environment. Also, each node must be able to connect to its own history database if you have it configured in the setup historical database. I don't have it, but if I had, be sure that the data set here are correct and that the node is able to connect. Also, be sure that Metaconsole and nodes have exactly the same version and minor release for the database. You can see it in the footer of the console. Here I am in version 7.58 and minor release 50, and exactly the same for the Metaconsole. So I don't need to change anything. If they are not in the same version, be sure you update the environment and all the elements are exactly in the same, because some of the changes will affect, most of the changes will affect the database information. If, for example, they are not in the same schema, this could fail. Also, all the nodes and Metaconsole must have the same maximum collection size because they are going to be sent between nodes and Metaconsole some files. So this collection size that can be found here in the setup enterprise is this value here, the collection size, and the metaconsole value in the meta setup, that it's here, collection size, must be exactly the same. In my case, they are, because I have a default configuration, I didn't change it. But if you have different values, be sure they are exactly the same. Some PHP parameters that are important. The most important is the memory limit parameter. Well, during the process, we are going to change this parameter from the value that it's set in php.ini in the configuration file to that's one, because as all the information for the merge process will be done in memory and will be done by the console, it will be in biggest environments with too much groups, with too much users, with too much policies. This could be too much information. So if we have a limit set here, it could make it fail. So we are going to set it to unlimited, so our console will be able to use all the memory available in the system to make this merge process, and after that we are going to change it again to the original value. But during the process we are going to set it to the +1. So I'm going to edit it right now. Just did the etc php.ini file. Depending on the OS, this could be a different path, so bear it in mind, and look for memory limit parameter. I have it in 800 megabytes. I'm going to set it to +1. So this means unlimited, and restart the service to make it work. And I'm going to change it in Metaconsole 2. +1. And restart the service. Okay. And there are also other PHP parameters, like for example postmax size, that must be larger or equal to the value of upload max file size, and those values must be larger or equal to the metaconsole value. But you won't probably need to change these values, because the default ones will work. Anyway, if there is something that it's not exactly as it must, check in the wiki for these values, the recommended values, and set them. Okay. In most of the cases, those won't have to be changed. Also, we need to be sure that we have enough space for the attachment directory, because there will be generated some backups for the database and the collection files from the nodes and the metaconsole. So this attachment directory that is set here in the node in the general setup, this folder here, and in the metaconsole in the meta setup, this folder here, by default it's in the Pandora console attachment directory, that we have enough space, okay, in the disk, that it's enough to store the database and the collection side. Usually 5 or 10 gigabytes should be more than enough for this process. Well, this is about and the last requirement, sorry, it's about date and time. Be sure that all your servers have a proper date and time correctly configured. Use NTP servers for this to make it work. This doesn't mean that all the nodes and metacalls all need to have exactly the same date and time. This means that they need to have a proper date and time. I mean, they don't have to be in the past or in the future. They need to be exactly the date and time that they are. Because then, if it's not, there will be problems from the synchronization because of some time marks. Well, that's about the prerequisites. There's something that you must be sure that it's okay, but there are also two recommendations for this process. The first one is to stop the Pandora server of all nodes and metaconsole. So I'm going to stop the process. systemctl stop Pandora server, and the same here, systemctl stop Pandora server. And the other recommendation is to stop the Pandora DB process. In both cases, this is because what we want is to avoid those processes to make some changes in databases while we are modifying them with this merge process. So even if there are some controls that will avoid this naturally, it's also recommended to stop these processes so we will be sure that this won't interfere in what we are going to do. So in the case of Pandora server, just stop the process, and in the case of Pandora DB, edit the cron.hourly Pandora DB file and add a hashtag in the beginning of the line. So this will comment that execution, and we will be sure that this won't be running while launching the process. Okay, so that's all our recommendation. Also, both Metaconsole and Nodes consoles won't be accessible while this is running for the standard users. Administrator users will be able to access, but not for standard users, for exactly the main reason, to evade something that is interfering with the merge process. So, with this Requisites suite app, how does this merge process works? It works in two stages. The first one, it's about the main database and all the elements merge, and the second stage is about the events update after that merge process. The merge process is also in two phases. The first one is the initialization. The initialization, what does is all the backups and all the merge in the memory for all the elements, for all the Metaconsole nodes elements. And after this is working and after that has been passed, then it applies all the changes for the databases. This is a process that could take long, because depending on the information of the environment, the biggest environments will take longer. So be sure you have a time window for this schedule in your company. And after that, if this works during this process, it's when Pandora console won't be accessible. After this finish without errors, we can start working again with the environment properly merged, and the event states will run in background while we already work. This will be updating all the events references about IDs or something that changes in the events that were generated before the merge process. This could take longer than the previous states, because the events are very numerous in all the environments. They used to be too many, sorry. This is run by a cron task that it's running in the background, so we can still working. But be sure, well, bear in mind that some of the events won't be shown in if you apply some filters, for example, filtering by a group, because they won't have been updated yet until this process finishes. So that's the most critical element that could happen to you, but in most of the cases won't affect. So let's run in my example here the unified databases process. I need to go to centralized management command center, to this menu. Here I will have the list of the nodes with the priority order. I can change it by clicking and dragging the different elements, so I can establish Metaconsole with more priority or the node. If I have more elements here, I can order them. Also, the both dots that must be green for the database and the API connectivity, and some warnings about all the prerequisites that we already has been maintaining following the wiki. So if I click in the Unify Databases button, it seems that it will unify the environment. I click in OK. I accept to start the process, and this start with the initialize merge and the apply merge process. So this will be running in memory. It start applying because everything was okay, and I set all the requisites. And as soon as it finishes, it says the process has been finished without errors. I can see here the process details, just all the tasks that has been run here. As my environment needs only one node and there are no configurations, it's very fast for me. And this events process, it's queued for the cron. I'm going to force it because I have it in the correct configure. If I run this the console cron, this will run the events process. That will be very fast for me too, because I don't have information. And I can see it here in Metaconsole. They have already finished for the events merge and for the in the Metaconsole and in the node. But this part should be running while I already use the environment. So right now, something important that has changed is about the synchronization. In previous versions for the synchronization, we had to make it manually. From this version, this is automatically done by the nodes. So we just need to go to, for example, in centralized management or alert management. I'm going to create a new template. I must do this in Metaconsole. I'm going to call it test. I'm going to create it. I'm not going to change anything in the configuration, just everything by default. Okay, so now I have a new alert template that it's called test that exists in my Metaconsole, but in the node there isn't already a template called test because it hasn't been synchronized. Synchronization works this way. If I go now to Meta Setup and to the console setup, I will see here in the database sync this icon of this eye icon that says that there are 3 tasks pending for this node that are an insert in the alert templates table and 2 updates. Those are the tasks that this node must synchronize. This synchronization is done by Pandora server that I have it stopped right now. So as soon as I start my Pandora server process, specifically the Pandora HA process, my node will read this information from Metaconsole table and will run all these tasks in order. So I'll be sure that every task done in Metaconsole about management will be done in the nodes in exactly the same order, and they will be perfectly synchronized. Even if my node lose connectivity for a long time or something similar, this will work. And also, if for example this fails, for example, suppose that I don't have a specific field in this table because I don't have the correct database schema or something like that, because an update, this will fail. The tasks that are after this one won't be run until this get fixed, and I will see an error here. So my administrators can try to fix this error and try to make this synchronization work again. If you have any doubt about this, you can contact our support team and they will be happy to help you with this. So as soon as I start here my Pandora FMS server, as my merge process has finished, I can start it again, systemctl. I'm going to start also the Metaconsole server. I'm going to enable again Pandora DB. Be sure you do it too. Just delete the hashtag in Pandora DB script in cron.howley. And also we are going to change the memory limit. Remember that we changed it for only this process, but we should set it again to the original value. So I'm going to change it here. I'm going to change it here too, and restart the HTTPD process. Okay, so as soon as it finishes, if I come here again, this eye icon will disappear because I won't have any pending task for my node. Here they are. I don't have any synchronization task pending here, and if I come here to the node to the alert template section, I will see that there is an already created test template right now, yeah, because it has synchronized everything. Look that it also says a warning here in the node that this node is configured with centralized mode, and all the templates, and this will happen also with users or alert actions or every element that are centralized, that I need to go to the Metaconsole to manage them. So everything must be created from here, from this centralized management section, and any creation, update, or something to delete must be done here. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is that this process, this merge process, won't be needed to run again for the environment, except if I add a new node or edit any of the nodes already registered in the Metaconsole. Okay. The only time I need to run this again is if I change the number of elements in this environment, then I need to run the merge process again. But if not, from now I can manage it from my Metaconsole. So that's everything for this today video, the workshop. Please, if you liked this, give us a like and share this video with any other Pandora FMS users that will be interested in this. And also remember to subscribe for new Pandora FMS workshops. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.